Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. In our final conversation with historian Jean Addams, we're going to talk about similarities and differences between Church of Christ and LDS church services. It's going to be a really fun conversation, and you won't want to miss it. Check out our conversation.
Well, cool. Well, tell us a little bit more about, it sounds like you've been to a Temple Lot service.
Several.
I've been, I went one time about 7 years ago. I caught part of I'd call it a sacrament meeting. That's what it seemed like to me, but I didn't stay for the whole meeting. Tell us a little bit more about their worship services. Is it pretty similar to an LDS service?
Yes and no. I mean, they have opening and closing prayer, that sort of thing. They have speakers scheduled, so that's all similar. And they sing songs, so those main ingredients are the same. The sacrament is a different situation altogether. That's once a month.
Okay.
And they still use the common cup.
Oh, really?
And they actually use two common cups. So they have two bread trays and two common cups. And those are just passed down by row, by row, by row. And they make a point before the ceremony, the service, that it's only for baptized members of their church.
Okay.
So a couple of differences there. So I find that's interesting. And then they also have, as part of their service, anybody that is in need of being administered to. And so then they'll call a couple of elders to come and administer them right there in the chapel, right during the service. So that's kind of different. And for most things, most prayers, they kneel.
Mm-hmm. The entire congregation, yes.
Mm-hmm. But if you, on the other hand, if you go to Sunday school and it's a Book of Mormon class, it wouldn't sound any different than going to an LDS Gospel Doctrine class.
Oh, wow.
Very, very similar.
So what about women? Are they treated differently in their church?
Yeah, they've had women missionaries before. They backed away from that. That's back in the 1930s, with no further explanation. When I asked that specific question to leaders of the Church of Christ some years ago, I was told that as far as speaking in church, that's strictly a priesthood responsibility.
Oh, so women can't speak in church?
Right.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And my recollection is they don't pray either.
Oh, really?
They have their own organization, somewhat similar to the Relief Society, for instance. And of course they lead music and they do all those other things. But that's been my observation as well as what I was told.
Now, if I remember right, it seems like we talked about baptism. Do you know when they baptize children?
That is left up to the person to make that decision, and as a result of that, most are not baptized until at least they're in their teens.
Yeah, I think 12 was the youngest I had heard.
Yeah, and lots of members that I've talked to was later than that.
Okay.
Even though they'd been raised.
Yeah.
In the church.
So they don't baptize at 8 like the LDS church does.
No.
They do it by immersion, I believe.
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
What are some other things about their church that you're aware of?
Well, they have. They pretty much use the terminology presiding elder.
Rather than bishop?
Rather than bishop. And they don't use the word pastor.
Okay.
And they are basically elected by the congregation. Terms can differ as to how long you're in office, I guess.
Your term of service.
Your term of service. If you get called to the apostleship, that's a different situation altogether. Probably was not much difference, but within that group, within the Council of Apostles, they don't have a president. There's no one person that's, quote, in charge of the church.
Mm-hmm.
maybe by precedent, sometimes the senior member, which was Bill Sheldon for years and years and years, but he wasn't, quote, in charge like at conference. He was just one of the 12.
Mm-hmm.
And many times they go years without having a 12.
Yes, Randy told me that as well.
Yeah.
So I think they've gotten down to 7 before.
Yes.
I believe.
Early on, too, was that case. Their second biggest area of concentration is outside, well, not outside, part of the Phoenix area.
Oh, really?
They have a large congregation. I've been there as well.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful people. Good time, yeah.
They don't have any in Utah, do they?
I don't know for a fact.
I don't think so.
They have them scattered around the country. And by the way, they don't refer to them as wards. They don't refer to them as congregations. They don't refer to them as branches. They call them locals. So the Independence local would be the one on the Temple lot or the Temple lot local. But there's another branch congregation out in East Independence, and that's called the East Independence local.
Okay.
And you can pick whichever one you want to go to.
So they don't care about geographic boundaries
Right.
or anything.
And that's pretty much along the same lines with the Community of Christ.
Okay.
You don't have to belong within a geographic area.
Right. So Randy told me something that was interesting, and I was surprised to hear this. I know the Bickertonite Church, I had Daniel on a while ago, and I know that they do speaking in tongues. I was surprised to hear that the Temple lot rarely, but he said that he has been around when they've had speaking in tongues. Were you aware of that?
Yes, but I've never been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said it was pretty rare.
Yeah.
But yeah, there should be someone there to translate, and so that was pretty interesting.
And they don't have the same emphasis. For instance, if you were comparing it with LDS Church, with the Aaronic priesthood, Melchizedek priesthood, in terms of the boy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
It's just the priesthood.
Yeah, the priesthood. And in fact, I know several men that don't hold the priesthood, that are faithful members of their church and have been all their lives, and don't hold the priesthood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and in positions of importance.
Now, the one time that I did attend, they had a baby blessing, and I think this was something that was a little bit different than in an LDS service. Was that, in the Doctrine and Covenants, it says that you're to bring the baby before the elders of the church. And so rather than have the father bless the baby, they have the elders of the church do that.
Well, that's interesting. I've never been there.
Yeah, I guess I got lucky then. That was lucky. So, and I believe that the parents pick who they would like to give the blessing, and it's usually a good family friend or something like that. So that was kind of interesting as well. So. All right. Well, are you coming out with a book or anything on this, or?
Well, I have a book that's out.
Oh, you have a book that's
It's
out.
called Upon the Temple Lot.
Okay.
The Church of Christ's Quest to Build the House of the Lord. It was published in, I think, 2010 or 11.
Okay.
Okay. It's about 180 pages, but it covers this whole thing that we've talked about. And from that, I've had several articles on the Church of Christ published in different magazines, and also on the redemption of Zion. And my next major project is going to be the book on the redemption of Zion, the return of the churches to Jackson County.
The
Churches. And I'm going to cover, of course, the Church of Christ, Temple Lot, the RLDS/Community of Christ, the LDS, and then there'll be a small inclusion because they were not till about the 1920s when the Cutlerites moved a branch of their church back, and that's the one that's
just down the street.
Down the street.
Yeah.
So that's down the road. That's my big project for the next few years, I guess.
Oh wow, that sounds fun.
One other interesting point that you might want to quickly note is on the Church of Christ Temple Lot, where they've had their missionary successes.
Okay.
They initially had great successes in the Yucatan area of Mexico,
Oh, really?
and still do. And that's where one of their apostles is from. That was done primarily through the Wheaton family back in the 1950s, maybe before, and has been perpetuated since that time. There's several locals in the Yucatan area. Subsequent to that, they've had success in the Philippines. That's probably their second major area.
Okay.
And then the third is in Kenya.
Oh, really?
And they also have a fairly good congregation in Honduras. In the United States alone, I've been told that there's approximately 1,000 members, and that may be the United States and Canada combined, half of which is probably in Missouri. And the next largest group is in Phoenix, Arizona area. Most of them are small, little congregations. And I admire their tenacity. Funding their missionary efforts got to be a real challenge to them. And they've had growth and success, like I say, in areas where the LDS Church has also had successes, and so is the Community of Christ, for that matter. So it's an interesting, and so is the Remnant Church, by the way, and also the Church of Jesus Christ, based back there in Monongahela, Pennsylvania.
Oh, the Bickertonites.
The Bickertonites, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense how big, how many members the Church of Christ has?
When I've asked the question, it's been kind of sort of answered, like 6,000 to 8,000.
Okay.
And I think that probably is generous, but okay.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, is there anything else we've missed on the Church of Christ?
Personally, like I said, I have several wonderful friends that are active members of their church. I've dined with them and talked with them and studied with them and enjoy being with them. They've become great friends and were very helpful to me in some of my early research, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know Randy was a great guy. I really had a great time with him, and I know I talked his ear off, but he was fun to talk to. So.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Jean Addams, thank you so much for participating here on Gospel Tangents.
You're more than welcome.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with historian Jean Addams. I'd like to thank Jean for spending so much time talking to me, and also coming all the way out here to Salt Lake City, Utah, so we could get together. Thanks, Jean. I really appreciate it. I'd also like to encourage you, if you'd like to know more about the Temple Lot, check out Jean's book, Upon the Temple Lot. It's got a lot of fascinating information, and you won't want to miss it. So go out and buy his book, Upon the Temple Lot, and here's a link. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about a different church with a very similar name, Christ's Church. So we'll get more acquainted with an apostle and a 70 from this church. Oh, I should ask you this question. Are you guys Mormons?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I have an I'm a Mormon bumper sticker.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, a friend of mine who wasn't in our church, when Nelson gave the talk, she made up some I'm a Mormon bumper stickers. Just so that we could say, hey, you know, if the larger mainstream church doesn't want to claim it, we can be the real Mormons, and they can be the ex-Mormons.
Very comfortable with being called a Mormon.
Okay.
Because I love the Book of Mormon. I managed to love it.
Yeah.
If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please support Gospel Tangents and become a subscriber. For just $5 a month, go to patreon.com/gospeltangents, and you can hear the entire interview. And you can also get transcripts available at either our Amazon website, or if you want to give the money to me and not Amazon, please subscribe on my website at gospeltangents.com, and you can click the yellow subscribe button. Of course, we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and all the other places. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents. And don't forget to click here to subscribe on YouTube, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some more of our great videos. Thanks again for listening.